Hello, my name is Jamie Sparling. I am the head instructor of Affinity Martial Arts and Wellness in Wausau, Wisconsin. Welcome to the FormABLE podcast, episode 12, with one of my favorite instructors and probably yours too, Guro Rick Faye from the Minnesota Kali Group, or MKG, uh, the headquarters in Minnesota. Before we get going, please like and subscribe and leave us a comment. Let us know what you thought of the episode and if you have any questions. And if I'm able to bring Guru Rick back, maybe I will be able to ask him some of those questions. Now, this is episode 12. I was told by my first instructor, Steve Fristo, that in the certain Filipino cultures, there was 12 was a very, very important number because it was spiritual. I was told that it was three, okay, land, sea, and air is what the Creator made. And if we add one and two together, that equals three. Now, many of the systems they teach in patterns of 12. And I was told that that was in that format because to say that we have more than 12 of something in certain areas was to say we were greater than the creator. So many systems might not say 48 or 64, but they would say I have four sets of 12 or however many sets of 12. Just want you to understand a little bit. This is a special one with Guru Rick. But anyway, without further ado, let's get into episode 12 of the FormABLE podcast. Guru Rick, how are you?
I'm well this morning. How are you?
I am doing great. Thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. No problem. How's things with you?
Things are they're actually really good. I'm doing martial art full time right now,
Wonderful.
and trying to work on organizing an online curriculum thing as well, and really enjoying training my wife, Tina. She's amazing. She's been doing really, really well and enjoys it. And hopefully, we're going to see you at Josh's. And
Yeah, rumor is I'm going to Madison.
well, last year you put your hand on Tina's shoulder and you said to her, whatever you're doing, keep doing it. And she
Yeah.
was on fire for 4 months of training off of that, sir. It was amazing.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, it was
Well, that's
just great.
fantastic.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I saw your question in the thing. If I could tell anyone how to make their martial art journey better, it would be get the habit of training the basics.
Hmm.
Just get in the habit of doing the art. And I was telling the group this weekend in Chicago, there's so many things that you see in people's development or you don't, depending on whether they do the work, right?
Hmm.
So things like basic double stick with footwork and all of that stuff that we do, that shows up down the line, and or it doesn't if they didn't do it. So,
Yes.
um, and I think that to make your martial art journey better would be to get an appreciation of the fundamentals and enjoy them. This is cool stuff we get to do by any stretch of the imagination.
Hmm.
This is fun, you know.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that would be the first thing that came to mind.
When I hear that, I think of how would tell us a story of the 13th area of Kali stick and coffee. That was your morning routine, and we talk about that a lot at Affinity. And uh, I remember at one point you told all of us, and it's probably still the same thing, to move around for 30 minutes a day in our art. And
Yep.
and that is one of the coolest things that I took from some of your seminars. I mean, always neat, amazing tips, so many things. I'm so grateful to be one of your students. Very grateful.
Appreciate that.
Yeah,
Thank you.
and but sometimes you would say something to me that, like, I don't know, simple, whatever, that would make sense to me in a certain way. You know what I mean? So We really appreciate that. So,
As far as the students involved with MKG, I was telling the group this weekend. Now at this stage, I just turned 67, so I'm kind of looking back and looking at all the things that have happened, and I'm just proud of all you guys. That's just that simple. I'm just proud of you. It's wonderful that people came along, they enjoyed what we were doing, they saw some value in it, and stayed with it. And like you're doing it full time. I mean, this is fantastic. So pretty cool.
so I'm gonna probably bounce between Guru and Sifu sometimes. So just so you know, it'll kind of go back and forth. How? Well, first of all, how was the Kali group born, and how did you get started in martial arts, sir?
Well, martial arts in general, I started in junior high. We had there was an Hapkido guy close, and so we started there. And then there was Minneapolis is the home of Southern Praying Mantis. Jin Fun Mark, the grandmaster of that system, lived here, and he's passed away now. But so I did some Southern Praying Mantis. That was interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And that is actually the first time I really heard about Bruce Lee, because he studied with Jin Fun Mark for a couple of days or something. I don't know what it was. But then their claim to fame is, we trained Bruce Lee, right? Mm-hmm. So, and they had Jin Fun Mark was excellent. And so did that for a bit. My training partner at that time, Scott Pomeroy, went out to the Aspen Academy. And the Aspen Academy was just a shell corporation that ran a camp out in Aspen, Colorado. And Dan Inosanto happened to be there. Well, he came back and his eyes were this big, and he says, "You got to check this guy out." So we went to the first weekend seminar that Dan did in Chicago. And we drove down there, and I came back and I said, "That's what I want to do. That is what we're going to do." And so luckily I had a lifestyle at that time where I could just follow him everywhere. So we showed up all over the country just about every other weekend, So, and we did that for years. And like I say, I was blessed enough people asked me, by the way, I should get this out of the way. People asked me, and they did, just in Italy, I had a guy at the conference there come up and say, "How did you plan all this?" Look, I didn't plan all this. He planned this.
Sure.
God did this. And so there's no way that I would have planned this career, this pathway, all these wonderful people around me, these blessings that I'm living now. That wasn't a plan. It was just, it wrapped around me and carried me through this far in life, and will continue to. So there's that. Anyways, we came back and trained every week. So we would get information on the weekend. Monday, we'd hit the gym and start training. And by the gym, I mean, the first one was my garage. We were in my garage, and that was what you now know as the Kali group, right?
Mm.
We took the name Kali group. A lot of people don't know this, actually. There was the San Francisco Kali group I saw was under Ben Largusa, and I just saw the name. I never met Ben Largusa. I met some of the people from there, but I just thought it was cool. And I thought, and then Angel Cabales, his group started being a Eskrima group. And I like that. I thought, yeah, we're more of a group. We're not an academy or a school, or we're just a bunch of people working out, And so I took the Kali group. It was the Kali Junfan group at that time. And if anybody watches this and you have one of those T-shirts, you're old. That means
I want one of those T-shirts, actually.
Yeah, but we were the Kali Junfan group, and then at some point, Guru said, he said, Rick, you guys have always liked the Kali. And I said, yeah, I wasn't a big Bruce Lee fan. It was okay. I just, they were B movies. I mean, they were whatever. I wasn't a big Bruce Lee fan. I'm a big Dan Inosanto fan. And I saw a depth and a talent there that I just had never seen before. I'd been around professional sports because my dad was involved in the NFL, and then later I got involved as a referee, or a sideline official. And just nothing like that. I hadn't seen anything like that. That level of accomplishment and skill, of understanding in his craft. Wow. So off we go. We're following Dan Inosanto. And along the way, he starts recommending people. There was a thing, the California Martial Arts Camp was in Irvine, California. And I went a couple of years there. It was only on for 3 years, but it was so fantastic, Jamie. The first one was 8 weeks, Monday through Friday, 8 hours a day. And I just took with different instructors. So I'd have a week with Bill Wallace, let's say. I had a week with William Chung. I had a week with Leo Gahi. I had a week with, and Dan Inosanto obviously was always the first week. So, excuse me. So learned a ton there. I mean, just learned, had reams of notes and whatever. Brought all that back. Then there started to be other camps. There was the Wisconsin camps, Michigan camps, North Carolina camps. So those were big highlight. And then we still went to weekend seminars. Mm-hmm. So we keep building this. The funny thing about this is I rented my first place, what's known as the Washington Avenue School, mm-hmm. which actually wasn't the very first place, but it's good enough. Mm-hmm. And we didn't want students. We actively chased students out of the gym. Eric Paulson will tell you that. When Eric Paulson showed up the first time, he comes in and Greg and I are sparring. Greg Nelson and I are sparring, right? And we both tell the story differently. In my memory, he's bleeding. In his memory, I'm bleeding. So I don't know. One of us is bleeding. Doesn't matter. So Eric walks in and we sort of look, and Greg just goes out, pushes him out the door and locks the door, and we go back to work. And so it was that kind of place, right? Then Tim Tackett saddled me with my first student. And he basically made me take a student on. So, really? Yeah. And so Bill Hathaway. And he was wonderful. And then people started coming. At some point, I realized, hey, I could probably make some money at this. And it was at first just to pay the rent. You know, I just thought that was my big dream, is that this would be rent-free. Yes, sir. And I was still working with my father selling sporting goods. Actually, before that, I worked as a detective for Target stores anyways. And I had other jobs, right? I had other stuff going on. And so it starts to build slowly over time. And there was no like business practice. You know, everybody talks about these business practices. I had a green sheet where I would try to record who came in and if they paid anything and what they paid. And I didn't really care one way or the other. So, and then I'd keep a box of receipts, whatever I spent. At the end of the year, I'd come up with a tax return and it was fine, you know. Then that started to grow. I would say that the biggest growth spurts came when we started to have Dan Inosanto here. That was 84. 84? Yeah. And so he first came here 84. Or was it earlier? It might be earlier than that, Jamie. It's just going to make me sound older. It doesn't matter. And so those were not the big events that you see now, but they were a big deal to me, and it was a big deal to my students. And they generally went pretty well. I know I had one that didn't. I had one where it was me and 7 people, and Dan Inosanto. I lost a car to that one. So I had to sell my car. But sure. And so we start growing, and then at some point we realized we've got to leave this wonderful, awful gym that we're in. I mean, it was terrible. People spit on the walls. We had a spittoon, but they never hit it. They were just, you know. But it was an old Rocky gym, is what it looked like. That's what it looked like. When Rocky came out, I thought, that's us. Absolutely, that's
You're
us.
a bum rock.
Absolutely. So then we moved over to what's called the Ford Center, and that was a much bigger gym, much better. And then we moved to Hennepin Avenue, and then finally we're back to where we are now. And I'm blessed to have, it's a 10,000 square foot facility with, you've been there, I mean, it's home. So and now we're here. The seminars start really with Larry Hartzell. So Sifu Hartzell decides to drag me around the world for some reason. And I had been other places assisting Guro Inosanto and Paul Vunak, those people. But Larry was the first one to bring me overseas. And so we started in England, which to me was like this completely alien culture that, you know, now I just think of it as a second home. But he really introduced me around to people got me used to that international scene and the domestic scene too. And then people would start to call me then. And so, will you come? Will you do this? My first big one, this might interest you. I think it's either 89 or 90. Udo Müller in Germany. He's in a little town called Speyer. And Udo's one of my peers. I know Udo. He's the same, been involved as long as I have.
Mm-hmm.
And he goes, "Hi, Rick." I said, "Hi, Udo. How you doing?" He says, "Well, Dan can't come this weekend. Will you fill in for him?" And I went, "Holy shnikes, what am I supposed to do with this?" So I get on a plane and head for Frankfurt, and it was wonderful. So I started, and I've done one every year for him since. And then other German groups got on board, the Spanish groups got on board. There was a bunch of them in England. I used to go all over that. What I do in England now is I have a central seminar. I do a camp. And this is because the last time I went school to school, I had it scheduled for me. Somebody scheduled it for me, a guy named Mick Tully. And he scheduled 20 seminars in 21 days, different cities. And by the end of it, I was just baked. And I said, "I'm not doing that again." And, we needed the money, and although it wasn't a lot of money, but we needed the money. And so from there, it's continued to grow. And now we're at a point where, I'm sure you've seen, we're holding these instructor conferences in exotic locations. The last one was in Italy. We rented a monastery, and it was unbelievable. I stood in there and almost wept. In the middle of the courtyard is a 1,000-year-old chapel. Yeah. And I thought, how did we get here? Because the one before that was in Hawaii. And I remember thinking in Hawaii, how did I get here? The one before that was in Osaka. And I think, it was awesome. And so now people keep looking to me like, how are you going to beat the last one? I don't know. They seem to just happen, and people follow along. The Italy one was funny. You'll like this, Jamie. It got scheduled at one of my summer camps. You come to those.
Yeah.
We were at camp, and as everybody does, we went out for beer afterwards, and we're sitting around. And one of my students taps me on the shoulder and says, "Well, we're doing a conference in Italy." And I went, whatever. Anyways, I was talking to this guy, whatever. So somebody else taps me on the shoulder. "I hear you're doing a conference in Italy." What? Okay, so I'm going, right? And little did I know, Valerio and Linda and a couple other people are a couple tables over planning a conference in Italy. And people are overhearing them. Now they're trying to figure out how they're going to tell me, right? So they haven't even broached the subject yet. So, I get done talking to these people. I walk over and I said, "So what's going on?" And they all do the head down thing. I said, "Guys, what's going on?" And my student Athena, she looks up, she goes, "Well, you're having a conference in Italy." Said, "Yeah, am I?"
Well, somebody needed to let you know, Guru.
I'm glad they did, yeah. Yes. So anyways, that brings us here, and now I get to do a podcast with you.
That's so beautiful. Yeah, I wanted to ask, especially about, well, you kind of told the story that I wanted to ask because in my heart of hearts, I thought the Wisconsin camp, I didn't know that was linked to the other camps and that was like part of that time period.
Yeah.
The most that I've ever been able to do, and I'm blessed to do it, is 4 days with you, or maybe 4 days with Guru, and or I could stay 2 extra days, but to have that amount of time that you had with them at that particular time, I couldn't imagine what it would be like to watch Guru with only 7 people in the room.
Yeah, that was quite a weekend.
I bet it was.
People think he teaches fast now. He used to teach much faster. It was like literally like getting a drink from a fire hose. It was blah, 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 blah. Now try this and try this and try this. And because obviously he's a genius intellect. And and you're trying to keep up with the information while you're being amazed by what he can do physically. And yeah, it was fun, super educational, but exhausting. That's what I remember. At the end of those, you need to rest. So of course I didn't learn about resting until way late. I didn't really. That was something other people did.
One thing I've always admired, and that hopefully I've taken we've been able to get from the being with the Minnesota Collie group, is the work ethic. Like you, like for a long time, I remember you talking about you would not go more. You had to have 90-minute classes,
Right.
and that was something that you did, right? And I I got to take a couple of those classes when they were 90 minutes, and that was always amazing. I understand as a school owner, as a teacher, why it needs to be 55 to 60 minutes.
Yeah, as a business model, you're right. Yep.
I get that. But at the same time, all the classes are always very cool. But at the same time, to have 90 minutes with you, would be able to flush something out and all that. And the work ethic at MKG has always just been amazing. For my 40th birthday, I did the 1 hour club.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, at Josh's.
Yeah.
And that was an experience for somebody like myself who was never an athlete. I just wanted to do cool stuff, and I thought martial arts was beautiful. So I'm in. I'm in for all aspects of it.
Right.
I remember one time telling you, I have you right here, and I'm going to spend more time talking than being able to learn from you. Students are good for that sometimes.
But I learned from you guys too.
Absolutely, sir. Absolutely. Anyway, I don't know where I was going with that. I was going to go off on a crazy train there, but the MKG, I like to tell people it's a little bit of a hint of something you'll find at the Inosato Academy with the Midwestern work ethic. And
that's a good way to put it.
I really, that's how I feel about it, and that's something that I got from you and all that. And the idea that I was going to kick pads for 1 hour was like, but I'm turning 40. I got to do something different. You know what I mean?
Do you want people on this broadcast to know much about your journey, your sort of life and what you've been through?
Oh, they'll get it all.
Okay.
Definitely. They will definitely get it all.
Because that kind of experience, as you call it, of the 1 hour test fits with all the things that you've been through.
Yes, sir.
It's just another test, another something that you accomplished and rose above. And I know you've risen above a lot of things, and that's pretty cool. That's very cool.
So appreciate that, Sifu. What I was going to say earlier is there was one time when I was talking with you, and I was wearing an MKG shirt, and I told you, well, I'm not an athlete. I'm a martial artist. And you looked at me like, you are an athlete.
Yeah.
Like, if I'm wearing that shirt, I'm an athlete. And it wasn't up for debate, and you weren't mean about it, but I'll never forget that. And by the way, that was one of the coolest things any of my teachers ever said to me. I needed somebody to tell me that. So it's not like, oh, wow. And that was part of me talking with Josh, like, what is that 1 hour club thing?
You'll be sorry you asked. Sorry you asked.
Pretty much, especially because my training partner moved 2 weeks before the test. So I did all the last 2 weeks of testing on a heavy bag. And I made it through the test, and people were like, wow, I didn't think that was going to happen. I was going to try to do my best to help you, but you didn't have a training partner for 2 weeks. And
wow.
Beautiful.
Good for you. Good for you. Appreciate I like those, by the way. These real benchmark achievement goals that we've set up, I would like to have more of them.
Mm-hmm.
We have the 1 hour club, we have the 10 round club, 5 round, we have these tests that we set up. And those revolved around Muay Thai, which I believe in. I really want to stay very well grounded in a Thai boxing curriculum, or I think, which is so important for a martial artist. But we, in our approach, it's just a piece. It's a piece of the greater art. Whereas a lot of schools now have gone over to training Thai fighters for the ring. You know, they're trying to, and that's really what their school is about. When Greg separated from us, he wanted the competitors. And I said, you take the competitors. I'm tired of competitors. Because there's a list of things that go along with young competitive thing, and none of them are good for a school. And it really wasn't what I wanted to develop. I wanted to develop normal, quote unquote, people with getting through life the best they can, and they need what we have to offer. And that's really where my focus was. So the fighter thing is great. They're fun athletes to watch. But that was Greg. And he came up in athletics. You know, a lot of people don't know. I chose as a training partner a guy who, when he went to the University of Minnesota, he came out as a gymnast and a wrestler. And the University of Minnesota said, we'll give you a full scholarship, pick your sport. Doesn't matter, pick your sport. That just doesn't happen.
That shows the caliber of athlete.
He was just that level of athlete. And my goal always was just to try to keep up with Greg. You know, he I don't know if he doesn't like that I say that, but he doesn't really acknowledge it when I say that. But that was every day. I would go to the college at Washington Avenue, and I'd walk up those stairs, and my legs would be burning already just from the staircase. And I'd look down the hallway, and I'd go, shit, he's here already. And I vowed I never would let him see me tired. That was the thing. I was supposed to be his Sifu. We called Sifu back then, right? But I was his trainer, and so I was not going to be the one tired. So I'd walk in and I'd be dying. And the minute I hit the door, I go, hey, Greg, how you doing? All right, let's get going.
Yes.
So it was the best I could do, you know?
It's hard to believe, sir. It's hard to believe. I know that once you had said at summer camp that you have more confidence in things that seem athletically sound. And I put that in my notes as like that was a piece, and where, you know, in a way that the Thai boxing maybe fits in with all of that.
Yeah, but that comes out of really the era, I call it the martial art mythology era, where, you know, you had all these kung fu poses and whatever, and martial art was a lot of mythology. It was just, it was fantasy. Long traditions from other cultures that have been passed down and sort of morphed over time, hundreds of years usually, and become something that was less martial art, and it wasn't athletically sound. It wasn't like, wait, humans don't do that. You know, when you stand in a Wing Chun stance like that, and I think of a linebacker running at you, you're not going to stand there like that, right? You got to move. So, and my understanding of movement obviously has changed over time, because at 67, I don't move like I used to move. And so I have to adapt it, you know, with the arthritis and that kind of thing. You have to adapt your art. You know, I heard a guy say that stand-up is really important. So stand-up is not only important, it's what I got, because groundwork is not really an option right now. So my stand-up, they call it now, is essential. And I have to move and base and do things with my body that will accept an opponent charging or whatever, and still be able to deliver force and that kind of thing. So I think the athletic side of it is taking a look at, okay, let's look at that movement. And is it too, I used to use the word kung fu-y, but is it too kung fu-y? Like, are we making shapes that really don't work? Or is it actually physiologically sound? You know, I remember Bill Wallace one time, he did this demo. He goes, I'm going to do the perfect right cross. And he has about the perfect right cross. You know who Bill Wallace was, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, Superfoot. So he goes like this, and he does the perfect right cross. Then he goes, now, I'm just going to subtract things. So first I'm going to set my heel down. Then I'm going to take my hip up. Then I'm going to raise my chin. I'm going to drop my guard and take my shoulder up. And look what he ended up with. He ends up with
the reverse punch, sir. Yes, sir.
And he's a karate guy. He's not trying to insult anybody. What he was trying to say is all of that athletic motion is necessary. It's what we should look for. And then I saw in Kali that was really the key, was body. What I see now, by the way, on the internet, I should say, is a lot of fancy twirling.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of twirling, a lot of fancy stuff, but that deep body mechanics connection that Dan emphasized so much, where the whole body's moving at once, I don't see it as much. I don't see it as much. And then the guys that I do see are phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
There's some incredible talent out there right now. I mean, people that have learned and trained, and people always ask me, what do you think of this guy? What do you think of that guy? Usually I just say they're awesome.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It really comes down to, can you relate to them? Do you relate well to them? Can you understand what they're trying to teach you? But there's some great people out there. So
Sifu, in certain ways, I feel like, and this is just my opinion, so it could be completely ignorant. So sometimes the person that's teaching me is more important than necessarily the art. And if I have the best art or whatever that is, and the teacher and I aren't connecting, and I don't, well, I always felt like you and Guru Dan always gave us a little bit of something about being a better person. You know what I mean? And so that made me want to go back. My guru who passed away during COVID, I didn't really talk to him a whole lot, but you would say at the end of summer camp, every time, make sure you call somebody. I got a 3-hour drive, Sifu. That's who I call.
all right.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's, well, I've learned that lesson. So yeah. But I think as martial art teachers, our goal should be not just to produce fighters,
Mm-hmm.
but to produce better people. That's our business. It says right in the manual that your goal is to create a more functional, more positive person, so we can have a more functional, more positive world. And that's it. We need that. To create aggressive ass kickers is actually easier than trying to help people be a better person, because that's that terminology is ill-defined anyways. And what is a better person? But each person is going through their own individual journey, and I've got a picture here somewhere with Guru saying that very thing. There it is up on the top, and he said, everybody runs their own race, and we all have our own journey to run, and the mistakes we make are, first of all, looking sideways and saying, "Oh, I wish I was that guy. I wish I was that guy.
Yes,
I wish I was this. I wish I was that." You have your own thing to do, your own journey, and you'll have your own challenges, your own. I always think of it this way: we're all running with the brakes on a little bit, because we all have our little things that hold us back a little bit, but we keep moving forward, keep slogging forward. And so I think when you're trying to influence students, I try to take a look at where they are in life, what's going on with you. I saw that with you. And so you try to look at where they are, and then some of them you can help with the struggle they're in the middle of. Some of them you really can't. You can just offer them martial art, hope for the best, But yeah, I think if I can have people come, I love the days when people come in and say, Sifu, I don't have to take my antidepressant meds anymore. That's because of this. Or the one I love, Jamie, is the smoking. And I hope it's okay if I swear on this.
Absolutely, whatever you want.
You don't have the FCC anyway. But because they always swear. The smokers always swear. I don't know why. But they come in and they go, I had to give up the fucking cigarettes because of you. And I think that's great. Like I say, well, good. I'm glad you had to give up cigarettes because of me. And I know that's hard, So those sorts of things mean more to me than to hear a fight story. Mm-hmm. For the first part of my career, that's what I heard. I heard fight stories. People would come and say, well, we did this, and we were at this place, and we did this, and we did this. And I always felt like I needed a shower afterwards. Sometimes, by the way, sometimes people were admitting to crimes.
Yeah.
That happened a couple of different times. And I had one guy in Cambridge, England, and I won't use his name because he's a prominent Filipino martial artist. And he was admitting to murder. He was talking about stabbing this guy and doing this. And I'm like, I don't even want to sit here. Because what you're talking about is murder. That's not self-defense that you just talked about. That's murder. Mm-hmm. You set it up. Scary. So I would much rather hear the positive stories, your story, Josh's story.
Yeah.
We talked about Josh. He's a great story.
Mm-hmm.
And he was down this weekend with us, and he looks great. He's such an inspiration to me. Like I used one of his phrases today. He's got a saying that I really took to heart. Because when you knew me earlier, I was more of a kicker. I like to kick, tie kicking and all that. I love Savat. I loved all that stuff. That stuff's really not an option for me now. So, Josh has a saying, and especially after his hip went, the score.
Mm-hmm.
So, he said, just because I can't kick high doesn't mean I can't kick at a high level. I love that saying. And what that means to me is whatever limitation the good Lord comes up with for me, I'm still going to try to do the best with it. Because it's there, it's probably there, even though I don't like it, for my own development. Mm-hmm. And if not, it's part of a bigger plan. It's part of this grand plan that we're living. And so we have to do the best with what we're given. And watching all you guys, like I started this today, I'm just proud of everybody. It's just so cool. And, not everybody's not perfect. And I know that not everybody in the MKG or JKD family, not everybody gets along. Mm-hmm. But not everybody anywhere gets along.
No.
You go into an office building, there's people working together that don't necessarily like each other. And we're all doing that. We're all doing that. But I'm proud of what people have done. And some people like you have overcome mountains to get here, and that's huge. Those are inspirational stories. You may know, I don't share this with very many people, but I had a miracle happen to me. And I'll keep it short. I'll leave some of the details out. It has to do with my heart. And I have a heart condition. And I failed a bunch of tests. And anyways, go rush into the hospital, do all this stuff. And I prayed like crazy over this. I mean, my belief is in a healing God. And so I won't bore everybody with my beliefs, but I prayed a lot.
You can totally do that on this podcast if you feel like you need to. It's not a problem.
Okay. So hopefully, nobody feels like I'm preaching too much, but it's important to me. Yeah. And so I prayed, and I believe that the healing power of Jesus Christ is real. I know it is because it's happened to me. So, and not everybody gets every miracle. I get that. I didn't get the miracle that I wanted years ago, but this time I go into the hospital prepared for, the guy had already shown me a pacemaker. He showed me the stents they were going to start to put in. He showed me all of this stuff, right? The guy puts the stuff in my veins and they go up into my heart. I'm about 20 minutes in and he goes, Mr. Faye, there's nothing wrong with your heart. And he starts to explain. And I'm going to try and do this without tearing up, but he starts to explain. And he's saying, well, maybe the test this and maybe the test, he's mumbling basically. And I said, look, doc, I know what happened here. I know what happened here. So you don't have to explain yourself. I got this. And he's at a loss to figure out what just happened because he's expecting to find all of this damage to the left and there was all this stuff. And I said, I know what happened here. So, and that's somehow, however that actually happens. I don't know what the mechanics of it are, but somehow that happens. And so I've seen a lot and I've watched other people live those kinds of things. And in some instances, the martial art helps them a lot. I had one guy, he was great. Did you ever meet Mike Lee? Big guy, dark hair, good puncher. Okay. He was funny. He was going through a real hard time. And he said, Sifu, if I go out of work and I turn left, that's where the bar is. If I turn right, that's where the collie group is. And he's honest enough to say, I turn right most of the time. but it helped him stay functional, Mm-hmm. And I believe that about a lot of people. They've had martial art help them through, everything from divorce to death to whatever. It's addicts, by the way, are some of my best students. Yeah. That's true because that addictive personality is also addictive to martial art. So they're the people who are going to stand there until they get it right. Because that little addiction thing kicks in. Like, no, I want to get this right. And whereas the athletes will get a pump or a heart rate or whatever, they Okay, that's good. Let's go. And or musicians too. Musicians are very good students because they are used to practicing until it's perfect. And yeah, I enjoy it. I'm a one. I wish I was a musician. That would have been fun. I didn't grow up with music, but they're cool.
Can't have
So
it all, Sifu.
no, no,
I'm just playing.
oh, you're right. And you got to have an emphasis. So this was mine.
Sifu, how many MKGs are is there right now?
I was afraid you were going to ask that.
I'm sorry. We'll
I don't
strike it
actually
from the
know.
record.
So no, you put it out there. I think so. In the U.S., I think we have 5. I think, but there might be more. And then in the UK, they have much more. By the way, I think we're at 22 or something in the UK. And then in Spain, there's 3. In Italy, there's 2. I've actually got a guy who calls himself MPG in Denmark. I have one in Chile, Santiago. Ivano, yeah. So
Yeah.
there's and obviously Japan, Osaka. So they're doing a huge project now, and so they're around. You know, it's not. It's I'm just very thankful for anyone that wants to be on board.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I think if they can take something from us business wise and help them make a good living, that I'm happy to do. So because I think anybody in martial art, that's one thing I should say. It's not only possible, it's very doable to make a decent living in martial art, and I think you should. So this old martial art martyr syndrome that we all had, where people would tell me all the time, you know, I'm teaching some classes, but don't worry, I'm not charging for it. And I would tell them, I said, well, you just cheapened your art.
Mm-hmm.
You just made it worth nothing. And that's not good. That's people don't, it's human. People don't appreciate something that's free.
Very true.
It's one of the problems with the way we've had our government work for a while. And because people don't appreciate something that's free. And it doesn't have to cost a mountain or whatever. It doesn't have to cost a lot. But free was never good. And then it's okay for you to be rewarded well for something you've put the kind of time in that you have. You know, other people have put the time into their craft that you have. And they're called doctors and lawyers and heads of corporations, that kind of thing. And they get paid well for it. But the martial artist seems to think, oh, gee, I'll just, make a little bit here, a little bit there. We put our lives behind this, and it should be worth money to the people receiving it.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. And that's one more thing I need for you to say one time for me to hear,
Yeah.
because there was a lot of just other opinions. And when I remember just driving home to Wisconsin and thinking, actually, I think Guro Rick's right, because it's like 25 years. Like, I don't know what it takes to be like, in another profession, but 25 years of doing it, like that's it's a start. I don't know.
Sure.
So that was, something I needed to hear. And I love how you would say, and I really enjoy this conversation. I did not mean to bring up a bunch of quotes that you say to you.
Oh, no, that's great. I'm happy somebody listens.
I think we all do. We all do. Probably at different times, but you once looked at the whole group and you're like, well, I know why you're here. It's not for the reason that you think you're here. And we were like in between Thai boxing rounds or whatever. And we talk about that at Affinity Martial Arts. Like, I'm really honestly, why they're showing up 5 or 3, 4 times a week, why they're paying for this, right? It's usually not the reason they wrote down on line B on the form. Right. But all that stuff seems to get better when we find the right group and all those things.
Absolutely.
Sifu, do you have anyone you could recommend to come on the pod? I don't want to put you in an awkward position, but somebody that's got a good story. We go with FormABLE. sometimes people will talk about Sam Alvey. He was on with me. He's a karate combat heavyweight champion. And he talked about a loss that he took. And that was his most formidable moment, which I wouldn't expect that from somebody who's on top of the world, but I could definitely see how that's important.
Yeah.
Could you recommend anybody to come on the podcast?
Yeah, a couple people come to mind when you said that. I would include, well, first of all, I would try for Linda, my assistant. She has a really interesting story. And I think you know that she's hearing impaired.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one challenge. But she also has so many accomplishments outside of martial art that people don't know about. And her time and dedication to what we do is, second to none. I mean, she's really, really, first of all, personally, she's been my angel, but she would be an interesting one. And once you get her going, just hang on to your chair because she gets rolling. So
I've never really been able to talk with her very much like that.
she's
I
really
talk with her and she'll help me and she's great.
Very knowledgeable. Yeah.
I would love to have
she's a personal trainer. She was a great athlete. She was a great softball player. And she's a chef. She's a culinary trained chef. So has all these accomplishments, was a black belt in Taekwondo when she came to me. And then has really done well with what we do. I think she would fit on this thing really well. Diana Rathborn's another one. So I don't mean to pick women right away. I'm not doing that on purpose. Those are just two that I picked. Andy Wilson in Seattle.
Yes.
He's phenomenal. One of the smartest people you'll ever talk to. And he's a little bit shy, but that's okay. He's a Midwestern guy.
Yeah.
So other Midwestern people will understand him. Mm-hmm. I think that's true. I would check out Peter Kwan. Do you remember Pete?
I do remember. I had him on another show I was doing called In the Dojo.
Sure.
Yeah, we had him on and got to talking about Silat and all that. And I have some students that are spending some time in Minneapolis over the next month.
Oh, wonderful.
Depending on where they can make it, you're going to see him or Peter's going to see him. They're trying to figure out that piece there.
Yeah, I think Pete. I think the world of Pete. We talk quite often, and he's definitely one of our best products. That's for sure.
He's amazing.
And I would have you had Josh on?
I have not had him on yet, but he is on the list, as was Linda already.
Okay.
And I actually
those are. I mean, and then if you want to go after the big names, I don't know if people like Sifu Asano and Francis Fong and these guys, I don't know if they do this.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't know. I'm unfamiliar. Eric Paulson might. I would guess he would come on. Maybe if he's got time. The other thing about making a living in this business is, for some reason, we're busy. I don't know why I'm this busy. I really don't. Like I've got 1 hour to do this.
Yes.
And then I got to go. And I'm like, why do I have to go? Anyway.
It doesn't seem right, Sifu, that when you work for yourself and every time, like I'm literally having a conversation with my wife, I'm dialing in something that's going on over here and she's got to repeat herself. And I was like, wow, how did that happen? But yeah, I get it.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't, but yeah, I would start there and see what you find. And because there's so many interesting characters, there's a bunch of them. Do you know Dave and Linda Hatch?
I do.
David Hatch, yeah, she's completely deaf, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and two of my favorite people. And David is as experienced as they come. I mean, he's got everything, and he's also done other things. He's an excellent Balintawak teacher, and he's a little bit dry, but he's wonderful. I think the world of those guys. I love being around them, and they were there this weekend as well. So yeah, I would start there and make sure you let me know when you're doing them because I'll come on and listen.
I really appreciate that.
How do people come on here and listen? How do people?
We're on YouTube on Affinity Martial Arts YouTube channel. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. See,
are these live? Does this go out live now?
No, this is being taped.
Okay.
Yeah, no, taped, as we said back in the day. I don't know what the kids say nowadays. You know what I mean? Matter of fact, 7s and 12s are really important. You're going to be episode 12. I haven't even, yeah.
Okay.
So welcome to episode 12 of the FormABLE podcast. But
There you go. There you go.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
just one of those things. I really
It's funny
appreciate.
when you said taped. When you said taped, I pictured those big old VCR tapes that we used to plug in.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. And you know, I was so happy that when you had a videotape at that time period, they were really expensive, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
now you can
And then
play.
every once in a while, the machine would eat the tape. You'd pull it out, and it's just tape coming out.
Oh, yeah, I'm scarred from that. As a matter of fact, I have some Inasanto, like all my stuff is scattered, but my
Yeah.
Inasanto DVD rack is pristine. And if you want to see
Nice.
like if somebody like knocks that over, my kids are like, dude, seriously, I think you whatever it is, but get Guro Rick Faye back in order. Something's gonna happen. You know, it's
Wonderful.
yeah.
Wonderful.
Guru, thank you so much for being here.
Oh,
And
thank you for having me.
yeah, you were too amazing. You've been such a positive influence on my life, and thank you for sharing your story, your miracle, and your faith. I really
Yeah.
appreciate that. It's not something that I
Well,
knew
good.
about, and anytime you're on the show with me, you talk about whatever you want, and that was amazing. And
Well, I know a little bit about that with you as well. And like I say, I hope everybody understands a little bit about your journey because you've overcome some amazing things. And I think that's, you should be proud of yourself. So that's for sure.
Sifu Rick being I have an MKG. I still have my original certificate hanging on the wall. Like
Oh,
I will go and like redo some of the other ones, but the one that's up on the wall at Affinity talks about how you give permission to the student to change the training methods, and I don't remember the exact wording, but basically like make it about my students and not about
yeah.
me.
The art has to be adapted.
Yeah.
Your specific circumstance in your locality will be different.
Yes.
And this is where a lot of the martial art organizations sort of go down the wrong path, in my view, because they don't let them individualize. They want standard curriculum, standard practice. This is the way you're going to do it. I don't really believe in that because you know your students, you know what they need, who they are, where you're trying to bring them. You know, what is it that you're trying to get done? And so what I can do is give out curriculum, a little guidance, what the art has to offer. And then what you can do is take that in and give your students, you're really giving of yourself then. And you're giving what you've taken in and what you've earned, what you've done, and trying to bring it to them so that it'll help them. And that's different everywhere. It's different in Madison. It's different, very different in Seattle. You know, so yeah, it's different all over the place. So the UK is very different to teach in. So it's not the same art. It's just not. So
Sifu, thank you so much for being here. I would love to have you come back and see us another time. And
yep. Anytime, James.
You have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. You take care, buddy.
You too. All right. This is Jamie Sparling, head instructor of Affinity Martial Arts and Wellness in Wausau, Wisconsin. This was episode 12 of the FormABLE podcast with Guro Rick Faye, the founder and head instructor of the Minnesota, world famous, but they're all over the world famous Minnesota Kali Group. Thank you for spending your afternoon or your evening with us. Ask us some questions in the comments section. Maybe you have somebody that you would like for me to reach out to and have on the show. We're interested in everybody's stories, and everybody's progress is important. Have a good day.